What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in. Let's create series here. Today we're going to work on the HealthFrame that we created last time. We're going to provide some functionality and we're going to make it respond to server events. So when the server tells us let's lose some health or let's gain some health, our HealthFrame is going to respond. And so let's get into it. Get into it. Last time we built our health frame and we named the health frame and its child health frame, and we don't really want that. We want those to be different. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rename the inner health frame. So we have the parent health frame over here, and then we have the inner health frame. We're going to rename this to health bar frame. So let's put bar in between health and frame. So BAR. And then we're going to do the same thing for shield frame. We're going to change shield frame to shield bar frame. And so that will kind of differentiate our frames. So we have this parent frame called health frame, and then we have a health bar frame inside of it, and we have a shield bar frame inside of it. So let's go ahead and get into a script. So to handle our GUI, we need to use a local script. And so a local script will run on the client, and then a regular script will run on the server. So let's add a local script to our health frame. So we can do that by pressing the plus, and then we can select local script. If you don't see it, go ahead and just type up here and search object. You can just type script. So we'll do that now. I'll just type script. And we'll see we have a couple options, but the one we want is this local script. So I'll select local script. And we want to rename it right away. So we'll rename local script to HealthFrame Controller. So HealthFrame Controller. And then we can delete this default text inside of it. And that'll get us ready to start scripting. And so the first thing we want to do is get references to the children, the health bar frame and the shield bar frame. And so we can do that. I'm going to just type in a comment, and in this comment I'll just say grab a reference. Let me scroll this up, make it bigger so you could see it. So grab a reference to the frames, right? And so the first one we want is the health bar frame. So we can say local health bar equals script dot parent dot health bar frame. We also want to grab a reference to the shield bar frame, so we can say local shield bar equals script dot parent dot parent needs to be capital dot shield bar frame. And so that'll get us those first two frames. So script is referring to local script, whatever script we're in, actually. Parent looks up and it refers to the health frame. And then we're looking for children of that parent. And so health bar frame is a child of health frame. And so that'll let us grab that. And also shield bar frame is a child of health frame. And so that'll let us grab that. And so with those selected, we can kind of create a table that will reference all the children inside of there. And so let's go ahead and change these variable names to indicate that they are frames. So we'll change health bar to health bar frame. So just add frame behind it. And then we'll do the same thing for shield bar. So we'll add frame behind it. Okay, and now under health bar frame, we're going to make a table. So we'll say local health bar equals, and then use an opening and closing curly brace. All right, so with that done, now we can start filling in some properties to make coding easier later. And so we can say, health bar dot icon, right? And so we want to get a reference to this icon here. And so that's a direct child of health bar frame. So we can say health bar dot icon equals health bar frame dot icon. Easy as that. And we'll do the same thing for shield bar frame. So we'll say local shield bar equals, and then use an opening and closing parenthesis the same way we did before, and that'll make another table. And then we'll say shield bar dot icon equals shield bar frame dot icon. So that gives us a reference to the icon for each frame. The next thing we want is this bar frame. So we can say right under that, right under the health bar dot icon line, we can say health bar dot bar frame equals health bar frame dot bar frame. And then we'll go ahead and do the same thing for shield bar frame. So we'll say shield bar dot bar frame equals shield bar frame dot bar frame. And so really all that is doing is looking inside of this Explorer, looking inside of our GUI, and it's grabbing the bar frame in each one. And we do want that. I don't suspect we'll be changing it much, but we're just going to take the reference anyway. And next we can start going into that bar frame on each one. So under health bar dot bar frame, we'll say health bar dot fill frame, which is kind of that vibrant color that we're going to make bigger or smaller based on their health or shield. So fill frame equals, and now we don't need to keep going into the health bar frame. We can just use health bar because we've already grabbed a reference to this. We can say bar frame dot fill frame. And so that'll get us a reference to that fill frame, and we'll do the same thing to the shield bar. So we'll say shield bar dot fill frame equals shield bar dot bar frame dot fill frame. Okay, and the last thing we need is that fill label, or that value label as we called it. And so we could do that by saying health bar dot, let's call it fill label. And this may look a little confusing because we named our actual label value label, but let's name it fill label. So health bar dot fill label equals health bar dot bar frame dot value label. And so that value label is really just this label inside of bar frame, but we're renaming it to fill label. And that's totally okay because we're using a variable name and we're naming it whatever we want. And so fill label makes a little more sense. And so under shield bar, we'll do the same thing. So shield bar dot fill label equals shield bar dot bar frame dot value label. Okay, great. So now we have a reference to each one of these, and that's all we basically need right now. And just to make sure these are working, we'll take a look inside of our game editor window and see that both of them are set to 75. So in code, let's set one of them to something like 25, just to make sure that our references are working. So we'll say health bar dot fill label, which is that thing that says 75, dot text, and let's just say equals 25. And then we'll say health bar dot fill frame dot size equals udim2 dot new. And so this is a new udim2, which size is a udim2. And so we'll say udim2 dot new, and we want to set it to 25% of its parent's width. So we can say 0.25, which is the X scale, and then X offset will be 0. Y scale will be 1, and Y offset will be 0. And now when we press play, we should see that the text says 25, and also the fill is only 25%. So perfect. It's no longer 75%, it's only 25%. So that's exactly what we want. We want our health frame to respond to adjustments that we make, and so it does. So we can press stop, and we can delete that little bit of test data. So if you're not caught up, now's a great time to pause the video. Go ahead and get caught up. I'm going to delete this these last couple lines of test data, and right now is a great time to pause and get caught up. And if you're caught up, then we'll move on. So we have our frames and we have references to each component, so we can start modifying them when we need to. And in order to modify these, we want the server to tell each client when their health or shield goes down. And so we can do that with things called remote events. So remote events allow servers and clients to talk to each other. So a good place to put remote events are in replicated storage. Replicated storage is just this bucket that gets we both have access to. The client has access to it and the server has access to it. So let's go ahead and click the plus sign next to replicated storage. Let's add a folder so that we can stay organized. And we're going to rename this folder to events. So I'll rename it to events. And I'm going to add another folder in there. And I want, because we're going to have a lot of events, so I'm going to make another folder inside of there called GUI, and these will be for GUI events. Okay, so now these two folders in place, I want to add a remote event inside the GUI folder, so I'll click the plus next to GUI. And then if you don't see remote event, you can just type remote, and you'll see remote event and remote function. All we want right now is remote event, and we need 2 of these, so go ahead and add 2. So we have 2 remote events, and we're going to rename the first one heal event, and we'll rename the second one damage event. So all we're going to do with these is when we call heal event, it will tell the player, hey, go ahead and heal. And then when we call damage event, it will just kind of tell the player that they took some damage. So we have heal event and we have damage event. Now we need a way for the server to handle or listen to calls to these events. And so we can do that by going in server script service, but we want to stay organized. So we're going to add a folder here. So add a folder inside server script service. And let's rename this to events also. So we'll rename this folder to events. And then inside of events, we're going to add a script. And so that script we're going to rename to something like GUI events controller. So we'll rename it GUI events controller. And I'm going to delete the text, the default text that comes with it. And now we need to get a reference to that replicated storage, because again, we get access on both the client and the server to replicated storage. So I'm going to get a reference to replicated storage. So first I'll make a comment that says get a reference to replicated storage, and this just tells whoever's working on the script later what we're doing. And then we'll say local replicated storage equals game get service, and then in here we'll type replicated storage. So now that we have a reference to replicated storage, now we want to get things inside of it. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to get the events folder. So we can say local events equals replicated storage, and then we'll wait for child, which is a special function that we can call, and all it'll do is it'll hang up the script, but it'll wait until we get the name that we're looking for. And so we're going to look for something called events, and it needs to be spelled exactly the same as the folder we named. Then we're going to look for GUI events, and that will be events wait for child. And then we're going to look for the folder named GUI. And again, this thing needs to be spelled exactly the way we wanted it. And now we can look for the actual events that we need. So let's get the actual events. And I'm just going to put that in a comment. Now we can say local heal event equals GUI events wait for child. And now we're going to grab the actual event. So this is heal event. And then I'm also going to grab the damage event. So local damage event equals GUI events wait for child, and this will be damage event. Okay, so now that we have both events, now we need to connect to their on-server event. So let's connect to server event fires. And that's like when you fire server, right? And so we'll say heal event dot on server event is how you would connect to an event from the server side. Then we'll connect, and we're going to connect a function, and that function's automatically going to pass in a player, which that player is whichever client is firing the event. And that's pretty important for what we're going to do here. But for now, let's just connect it and pass in an anonymous function that will have a player parameter. And then below that, we'll do the same thing for damage event. So damage event dot on server event connect, and then we will pass in another anonymous function, and that anonymous function will have a player parameter passed in, and that will leave it at that. So that connects to the server events, but now we need a way to listen to these same events on the client. Well, the good news is we already have a client LocalScript already there. Let's just connect to them there. So we'll go back, well, let's pause. Go ahead and pause the video if you need, and write this code out in the GUI events controller, and then we'll move forward. We're going to jump back into the HealthFrame controller. So go ahead and pause, and we'll get into the HealthFrame controller right now. So we'll go to the HealthFrame controller. And so in the HealthFrame controller, we need to grab that same replicated storage, the events folder, the GUI events folder, and then both events. So instead of typing it all out again, we can just copy and paste. So let's go back to our GUI events, and let's just grab all of these top lines from the very top, grab a reference to the replicated storage, all the way down to the end of that damage event reference, and let's copy. Then we'll go to the HealthFrame controller, we'll just paste it right in the top. And so that's going to give us everything we need to get moving right away. And so I'm going to press enter at the end to just make a space in between the event references and then our health bar frames and things. Then I'll scroll to the bottom and I'll add a couple lines. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to connect to those events, but instead of the server event, I'm going to connect to the client event. So I'm going to say heal event dot on client event, and then I'm going to connect an anonymous function again. But these functions are not actually, they're not going to take in a player, because the player is the client, and ROBLOX knows that in a local script we are the client, so we don't have to pass in a player there. I'm going to do the same thing for damage event. So damage event dot on client event, and then I'll connect an anonymous function again. And now we can do things when the server fires those events to the client and tells us something. Well, what are they going to tell us? Well, we need them to tell us how much damage or heal to take. The server is the ultimate authority on this. So when the server says, hey, take 10 damage, we can do that by passing something into the function. So let's say heal event dot on client event connect the anonymous function. Let's take in a heal amount. And in the damage event, let's take in a damage amount. And these are just variable names. We get to call them whatever we want, but we want to make them make sense. So we have heal amount, we have damage amount. And so we already have references to these frames and the fill label and the fill frame, so we can do things to these. So let's go ahead and take this heal amount, and when the server says, hey, heal, let's say 10, heal 10, let's do it. And so let's to think about this for a second, let's go back to our game editor window, and let's say we get a heal from the server. Well, if our health is at 85 and we're going to heal 10, no problem, we'll go to 85. And then if we heal again, we'll go to 95. But if we heal again, we would go to 105. And let's just say we don't want that. We only want to go to 100. So let's say any overhealing should go to our shield and would put our shield plus 5, right? Because we're at 95. We heal 10, so we would take 5 and put it on health. And then we would take 5 and put it on shield. And then we would continue to heal up our shield, but we don't want to overheal shield. So we don't want our shield to be 105. We want to stop it at 100. So we can handle that. And then on the other side of it, let's say we're taking damage. Well, if we have shield and our shield is 75 in this example, if we take 10 damage, we don't want it to go right to our health. We want it to go to our shield first. So our shield will take 10 damage. It'll go to 65. And then 55, 45, etc., etc. But let's say it gets down to 5. Well, when we take 10 damage, we don't want shield to go to -5. We want it to go to 0, and we want to roll over that other 5 into our health. So our health would drop down to 70. And then we would keep taking 10, 10, 10. But once our health gets to 0, we're gonna make the player die. So that's our plan. So let's go ahead and get into it. So HealthFrame, on the heal event, let's make some comments about what we just talked about. So we'll say, first, check to make sure the heal amount doesn't bring our health above 100, right? Because we don't, if it does, so actually let's just type this out. If it does, apply anything over 100 to our shield. And that sounds about right. And then we should also add a comment that says, do not raise our shield above 100. So that sounds good. And then on damage, we want to do pretty much the opposite. We want to say, first target shield, but apply any extra damage below 0 shield to our health. And then when our health is down to 0, die locally. And basically all that means is kill the player. Okay, so now we have our script kind of laid out. We have the comments in. So now we're going to write the script that actually takes care of that. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is get our current health and our current shield. So we can do that by saying local current health. And if you remember, we have that number on each bar. So let's use that number. But we're going to turn that number into an actual number. So we can say toNumber, which is a nice little function we get to use. And then we'll use healthbar.fillLabel.text. And all that does is looks inside healthbar, grabs the fill label, checks that text, which is a string, which we are using a number inside of that string, and is turning that string into a number and setting it into current health. And then we'll do the same thing to current shield, and it'll be almost exactly the same thing, except instead of using health bar, we're using shield bar dot fill label dot text. So same thing. So now that we have those two things, let's go ahead and check for any overhealing. And we're in damage event. So let's also do this inside heal events. We'll say local. Well, let's just copy and paste. No problem. So we'll copy and we will paste. So now we have current health, current shield in both. And so in our heal event, let's go ahead and check for anything, any overhealing that would apply. So we could say if current health plus heal amount is greater than or equal to 100, then, and basically what we're saying is if this heal amount is going to bring our health over 100 or at 100, then let's do some stuff to make sure it applies to the shield. So let's say apply over heal to the shield. Otherwise, so else, which is a keyword, else, otherwise we're going to make sure it applies just to the health. So we'll say, just add to health. And then we'll say current health equals current health plus heal amount. And that's perfect. So if it doesn't bring us above 100, then just heal us, no problem, we're done. But if it does bring us over 100, we need to get the difference. And we can get the difference. So we can get the difference by saying heal amount equals heal amount minus, and then we're going to do some math inside here. So we're going to say 100 because that's our maximum health. 100 minus current health. And so let's say just to put this into a real world example, let's say our health is already at like 93. And now we're going to heal for 10, right? So our heal amount is 10. Our total health is 100. So we're saying 100 minus current health, which we said was 93, comes out to 7, right? So that 100 minus current health is 7. And then we're saying heal amount equals current heal amount is 10. Minus 7 is 3. That's our overheal. So now that's how we're getting our overheal. So we have whatever the overheal is set into heal amount now. And we can safely say current health equals 100 because that's the maximum heal. And then we can check our current shield. So if current shield plus heal amount is greater than or equal to 100, then, because remember, we don't want to make our shield over 100, then we'll just say current shield equals 100. Otherwise, same thing, simply just add it to our shield. So current shield equals current shield plus heal amount. So after we've done all that, we can just delete all of these comments. And so after we've done all that, then we want to set our GUI. We want to make the GUI reflect what we've just done with our cool math. So let's set our GUI. And then I'll just put in parentheses update because we're actually updating our GUI. So we have health bar dot fill label dot text equals current health, right? Because we just did some math on current health and figured out what our new health is. And then shield bar dot fill label dot text equals current shield. So that's the easy part. Then we need to make our actual health and shield bars grow according to what their new value is. And so we can do that simply by saying health bar dot fill frame dot size. And since we parented this fill frame to a bar that has 100% width, we can do it in respect to that. So we can say udim2 dot new, and basically here all we need to do is divide our health, current health, by 100 to put it into like a percent. So we can say current health divided by 100 is the X scale, and then we can just do X offset is 0, so that's an easy one. Y scale is 1, we want it to be full height, and Y offset is 0. So that's an easy one. If you don't have that, go ahead and pause here. Maybe I can just minimize this here so you can see the whole thing still. Perfect. All right, and then we need to do the same thing to the shield bar. So we'll say shield bar dot fill frame dot size equals udim2 dot new, and we'll do the same thing but for shield. So current shield divided by 100 is the X, or the width, the X scale. X offset is 0. Y scale is 1. We want it to fill vertically. And Y offset is 0. Easy peasy. So that ends that. So our heal frame technically is done. So I will leave this here. Go ahead and pause, get caught up, and then we'll move on to the damage. Okay, so let's get to the damage. So we know what we kind of want to do here. So the first thing we need to do, I'm going to delete this comment because we're coming back to it. We know what we're going to do. So the first thing we want to do is any over damage needs to go from the shield to the health. Okay, so first we need to check the shield. So we're going to say if current shield minus damage amount is less than or equal to 0. We want to make sure that that damage amount either brings our shield to 0 or more. If it does, we're going to apply anything remaining to the health. And so we can do that by saying damage amount equals damage amount minus current shield. And let's put this into a real world example. We can say, let's say shield is 5 and we take 10 damage. So damage amount is 10. We're going to say damage amount is reduced by the remaining shield, so 5, and that leaves us 5 damage. And so that's what this math is going to do. It's going to leave us 5 damage. And then we know that that brings our current shield down to 0. So let's go ahead and set that to 0. With this, we know that current shield is set to 0 because we've consumed all the shield and we have a remaining damage amount. Otherwise, so else, and else is going to handle if current shield minus damage, still has something. So we can say current shield equals current shield minus damage amount. So current shield equals current shield minus damage amount, and that's going to consume the entire damage amount. So damage amount equals 0, and that'll handle both of those cases. And then without doing more if-then statements, we can just say, hey, let's take whatever remaining damage amount there is, let's take it out of health. But in that else statement, damage amount we're setting to 0. So health equals health minus damage amount would still leave health what it is. So we're going to say current health, that's what we named it, current health equals current health minus damage amount. And either way, this is going to be handled because if there's a remaining damage amount, we take care of it here. And if current shield consumed all of the damage, we take care of it here. And so in this case, current health would not be affected, so no problem. But we're going to take care of it either way. And so then we need to see if current health is 0. So if current health is less than or equal to 0, then, so if this happens, let's just set current health to 0, but then we need to kill the player. And so we can use that, we can use the player service to kill the player. And since we're in a local script, it's a little bit easier. So we could say game get service, and this will take the player's service. We can use local player. We can get their character, and then we can get their humanoid. And once we have their humanoid, we can set that humanoid health to 0. And that literally just kills the player. So that's perfect. Okay, and then finally we need to update the GUI. So update the GUI. I am going to come back and add some comments above that, but I don't want to break where we're going. So let's just say update the GUI, and then let's actually update the GUI. So it's going to be literally the same thing as we did up here. So let's go ahead and copy. And let's paste it down here. So I'm going to replace that comment, and I'm just going to paste. And so that's going to set our health bar text, our shield bar text, and then our frame size and on both of them. All right, and so back up here, let's just add some comments on what we're doing. And so current health equals current health minus damage amount. Let's just say apply any rollover damage to the health. And that's basically all we're doing. And then we need to check if damage kills the player, because that's all we're doing there. And then we're updating the GUI. So we have our script. Our script is done, but we don't actually have a way to test it. And we needed to be able to test it. So how can we test it? Well, we can make pretty much a local frame that we can use, and let's just use like 2 buttons. So we'll make a local frame with 2 buttons that'll call those remote events. The server will respond, and then the server will tell us to update, our shield and our health. So let's test it. So we can test it by going into Starter GUI, in the Screen GUI, and let's add a frame. And that we're going to rename that frame to Test GUI. And then I'm going to open the game editor window, and I see that frame is there. And let's set its size. Its position can stay the same, but let's set its size to something like, scale is 0.25, offset is 0, and Y scale is 0.25, and offset is 0. And that just gives us this rectangle at the top left. This is a throwaway, so we don't want to make it look real pretty because we're going to end up deleting it. But this is a way for us to make sure our server is telling the client to update our health frame. And we can do this for, the inventory and all of that. We just want to make sure our GUI is working. So inside of this test GUI frame, let's go ahead and add 2 buttons. And these are just going to be text buttons. So we can add one, and then we can duplicate it to add another. And let's actually don't duplicate it yet. Let's add that one, and let's set its position and size. So the size is going to be X scale. Let me just make this a little bigger so we don't have to keep scrolling back and forth. All right, so the X scale will be 1, offset will be 0, Y scale will be 0.5, and offset will be 0, and that'll make it half of the height of the frame. And then now we can duplicate it. And all we need to do on that second one is change its position Y to scale 0.5. And so that'll set our buttons kind of in a vertical list. And then we're going to set the top button. Let's change its name to Heal Button. And the bottom one, let's change its name to Damage Button. And you can probably assume what we're going to do with these. And so let's make the heal button look something like a heal button. So let's just go to the background color at the top, and let's change it to some green color is fine. The damage button, we'll change it to some red color. And then the text, if you scroll down, we want text scaled true. The actual text on the heal button will be heal player, and then in parentheses maybe +10. And then on the damage button, we'll change that text to damage player, and then like -10 is fine. And we want to use text scaled again. And then inside of this test GUI, last thing we want to do is add a local script. And we can call this one just test GUI is fine, doesn't matter. It's a throwaway, we're going to delete it. And so we need to get a reference to the heal button and the damage button. And so we can do that by saying local heal button equals script.parent.heal button. And then we could say local damage button, same thing, script.parent.damage button. Okay, and then we just need to attach to like a mouse button click. So we can say heal button dot mouse button 1 click, and then we'll connect an anonymous function. And we'll do the same thing for damage button. Damage button dot mouse button 1 click, connect, and this will take an anonymous function. Perfect. Now we also need to grab those events. And if you remember, we copied and pasted from, it doesn't matter, HealthFrame controller or GUI events controller is fine. We'll copy and we'll just paste that right at the top. And so that was from the very top to the end of damage event because we need those events. And so now when this heal button and this damage button are clicked, we just want to fire those events, but we want to fire the server. So on heal button click, we'll say heal event fire server. And we'll do the same thing for the damage event. Damage button click, we'll say damage event fire server. That's it. But we need to handle these on the server. So now that we have fired these on the server, let's go ahead and go to GUI events controller. And now we have these on server events, but we haven't done anything yet. But if you remember, in local scripts, we handled those on client events, right? So we're ready to receive Fire Client. We just haven't done it yet. So let's go ahead and do it. So on GUI Events Controller, on Server Event, remember we passed in the player. All we have to do is fire it back to the client. So we'll say Heal Event, Fire Client, and we'll pass in the player. Plus, if you remember, we were handling like a parameter, a heal amount or a damage amount. So on Heal Event, Fire Client, Player, which is the client we want to tell, and then a damage amount. Let's just do, or a heal amount for this. Let's just do 10. And on Damage Event, let's Fire Client, and that'll also be Player, and we'll just do 10 damage. And now we can test it. So go ahead and pause here, get caught up. Go ahead and pause here, make sure that your GUI Events Controller is caught up. In about 3 seconds, I'll move over to the test GUI, so you can pause there. 2, 3, okay. Now you can, this is the test GUI, you can make sure that's caught up. And in about 3 seconds, I'm gonna press play. Okay, so I'm gonna press play. And now when I click the heal and when I click the damage, it should, what it's gonna do is fire to the server. The server event listener is going to trigger, and then all it's doing is firing back to the client. So we're making an actual round trip. And so when I click this button, it should go to the server. Server should come back to the client, and it should update the client's health frame. So when I heal player, it goes to 85, it goes to 95. And now when I click it again, it should go to 100, and our shield should go to 80 because of the 5 rollover. Perfect, 180. Now when I click again, 90, 100. And now when I click again, it should do nothing because we're stopping at 100. So I can click all I want, doesn't do anything. But now when I do damage player, we go to 90, 80. It keeps going on shield until I get down to 0. Now it's going to affect the health bar. And so now I can bring this down. Once this gets to 0, my player should die. Perfect. So that is how we make a health frame. And our health frame has a shield bar, has a health bar, and you can do the exact same thing for something like an experience bar or whatever you like. So that concludes our health frame tutorial. So this is episode 3 of our Battle Royale. We have a working health frame, and next time we will script the inventory frame. So thanks for joining. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like and subscribe, comment down below if you have any questions, and we'll see you next time.